You're listening to Fish Out of Water, the podcast where feeling out of place becomes the start of something new. Dive in with us. Let's explore stories, insights, and real conversations that help you swim forward with purpose.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Fish Out of Water. We're on episode 3. And today we're going to be talking about understanding our essential limitation or gap and how we shift from fear to motivation, because we recognize that our pace doesn't define us, right? So the idea of this episode here is to bring awareness of how our wiring shapes our expression and our connection with teammates, with people in our lives, friends, family, and so on. And as we looked forward to future episodes, we thought, you know what, let's do a short segment really to focus on this idea of pacing, because where the temperament styles are involved, because it is the pathway that helps us to move towards clarity, right? And so Brett is going to be the bringer of this information today. Brett, thank you. We are here again, and I'm going to just hand it over to you to take it away, because there's so much to unpack here, and I think you do a really awesome job of bringing things in a way that is easy to understand, is very precise. So take it away, my friend.
Well, Lisa, I'm so happy that we're seeing more of this conversation unfold in real time, and that right before we press record, one of the comments that we were talking about is remaining in our distinction while moving towards what it means to do things collaboratively. And I
Mm-hmm.
use the example or the analogy of something that's been braided together, that if you were to take three distinct colors of thread or rope and you pull them together into a very tight braid, that you don't lose the distinction of each of the colors. So if you have a white, a red, and a green, or any color at all, the colors are not lost in the midst of coming together. That as we begin to unpack our own distinct nature in the weeks ahead, we're going to discuss three core functions of where we sit in our understanding of self and how we then relate to others. And the first is fear. And I think that one of the most essential parts of this conversation is when we use the terminology of fear, we're not talking about that which threatens you. We're actually talking about the parts that are kind of missing, the parts that you don't have, but we don't want you to necessarily see them as a weakness that you're trying to develop. We want to see them as a gap or a limitation that becomes invitational.
It's
These are
so
the
important.
spaces. Oh, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I am not trying to become what I am not.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole of the self-help industry, I mean, we've got a multi-billion-dollar industry of a new book, of a new plan, of a new thing, of a new idea. Like, we're right into 2026. And the idea that so many of us started this year with, I'm going to do X, I'm going to do dot dot dot, whatever that's going to be. And whether you were successful, you struggled, or you've completely fallen off that path, a lot of times we're focused on the thing that we don't have, that we're trying to get. And so we see that as this internal weakness that I have to fix me,
Mm-hmm.
versus what if there was somebody in my community, in my life, in my experience that had those essential skills that could then cover some of my gaps or limitations, and my passionate strength becomes the place where we ultimately are finding this sense of peace, is
Mm-hmm.
that my function and your function together create this braided experience. And the more people that we add into this, the stronger that we become, the more collaborative that we become. And so to understand this first phase of fear, before we kind of get into the idea of what motivation looks like and what our unique expression can become, we want to talk about, and we did this in season 1 very, very briefly, but we talked about the first challenge in our development as human beings.
Yeah.
And the first and most problematic idea is safety and security. And when we do like pre-parenting, so not premarital, but because the marriage is already the first family, but when we extend the boundaries of our family, when we start to add children in, when my wife and I start doing this teaching, we explain that your child's experience in the world is going to be defined around safety, which is the community, is the village that I'm living in a safe place for me to exist? And the security is for the child, is there enough food for me in this context? Am I getting what I need nutritionally and sustainably to continue to move and grow? Now, as we grow and develop into our child years, into our teen years, into our adult years, these two elements don't disappear. They change somewhat of their definition. So my safety will always kind of remain the safety of my community, of my village, of my experience. Security may or may not necessarily be food related. It could be any number of other elements that we need to be able to have a conversation around. We need to be able to speak to. And in speaking to it, we're first and foremost, this isn't your flaw. This
Mm-hmm.
isn't a problem. This isn't the thing that you need to get better at. Like, we're not saying that. Like, when we deal with the child parent relationship, we're not saying to that newborn child, okay, hang on, you're supposed to feed yourself. Like, figure it out. I'm here to help and support you, but you got to figure that. That's not
Yeah.
how a community works.
Right.
And so the idea of it's not a flaw, it's an invitation. The mother or the father is inviting the child into this communal experience
Mm-hmm.
around feeding. The idea that the invitation is you're going to do and learn everything you need to do and learn, and I'm going to then reciprocate that learning, development, and process. Because Lisa, when you and I are together, we create something very, very unique. And there's so
Absolutely.
many more elements. There's so many more elements of kind of what happens beyond the camera when we're not pressing record, and the conversations that we're having get so exciting. We're like recording that because, oh my goodness, that was so good. But I think that what we become is different than what my wife and I become, what my gaming friends and I become when I'm coaching in the sports development. The Everything is unique to the ingredients that are added, but it's how are we going to allow these aspects to be built together? So let's talk about the autonomic understanding of where this fear, again, not that which threatens us, but that which is revealing the gap or the limitation. And that this is the individual, these are the core essentials that when they're unmet, we lose this sense of safety or we lose this sense of security. So then all of a sudden, we're now frantically looking for this protection measure
Mm-hmm.
to revisit the communal component. It's that we're all of a sudden using the community to fulfill these needs. And so I want to speak very quickly to each of the styles and how we move through each of these directions, starting with the place of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the reflective person, this will be episode 1, their pursuit of clarity is really trying to solve for their misunderstanding or possible criticism. The intentional person is seeking connection in order to solve their loss or their lack of influence that they're experiencing. The supportive style is seeking the steadiness. They're solving or they're looking to solve for the unexpected shifts or changes or potential relational tension. And the empowered is seeking direction, and they're looking to solve that for being overlooked or their loss of direction. And so none of these movements are wrong. These are the honest attempts to feel safe, to pursue the security, so that we can continue to grow in our strength and not be distracted by that which is limiting us. We don't want to dismiss these and become the I've got to overcome this kind of attitude. That's not what we're trying to create. We're trying to create an experience that's invitational, that we become whole when we are together. We become enough when we are in unity through our unique diversity. So, like as an example, I would say, growth doesn't ask the reflective individual to all of a sudden become bold. We're not asking the supportive individual who's seeking to resolve relational tension. We're not asking them for all of a sudden to become the loudest person in the room. We're asking each of you, we're asking each of us to trust in the design that's within us so that we can move from the fear, this autonomic response, into an intentional, and I know that's a confusing phrase, but to move into our more natural style. And this is where we're stopping competing between us, and we're moving the challenge or the problem that we're facing in front of us, so that our collaboration really centers down on what does it mean to be working together.
So I just want to pause there for 2 seconds, because what I heard there at the end really come nicely together is that we are, I'm kind of repeating this, but trying to say it in my own words here, is that we have this, we're at odds with this idea of competition within the group, because this person's going at this pace, this person's going at this pace, I'm not able to keep up, or I got to slow down for these people or whatever. But really, it's a matter of removing that competition, because when you better understand the different temperaments that are part of the group, that competition is removed, because now we start to work with each other in those strengths. And so the idea is not that the competition is no longer existent, it's that it's the shift, there's a shift in what the competition is. Now it's outside of the group of that's what we're moving towards. Does that sum up what you're
Yes.
saying
Yeah.
there? Okay.
Or and maybe not even moving towards, but we are now overcoming.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. That's awesome. I really like how you started out with the chord. And I think that there was something that was also missed in how it was presented. So you talked about the chord having three parts that each represent themselves and are never removed, even once the chords are braided, and that there's three main topics that we're going to attack, approach, present for the individual types. But I also, in what was just said, really see this use of that analogy, in that when you braid different temperamental types, that chord becomes that much stronger. And each of the individuals that represent the different temperament styles are still there as themselves. But because the gaps are being filled in with the strengths of the different temperaments, there's nothing that needs to keep you back, or I said needs, but really there should be nothing that can stop you if you're truly in that collaboration, and those gaps are being filled with people being authentically who they are and how they operate. I don't know, that for me really sums up kind of where we're going with the next few episodes, right? This idea of reverse engineering, going from fear to motivation and then expression, in terms of getting to that full collaboration, right? Am I jumping ahead of where you are at this point?
No, I think that where we're at right now, this is ideal.
Good.
And in that we weren't using this episode as this broad. We're just trying to be as high level as we can
Yeah.
before we kind of get into each of the different elements of what does it mean to rise up, what does it
Mm-hmm.
mean to be in unity and together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if we, and I used this before we started recording, the idea of us going on a road trip together, but you're at your house and I'm at my house, and we've agreed that we're going to meet at X point in the destination, at the process, the
Mm-hmm.
road stop, a rest
Mm-hmm.
stop along the road. How you're going to need what all the things you need to do to get there are not the things that I need to do to get there. And we're not going to judge the process of getting from fear towards our motivation. Some people are like ready to make that step, other people are not. But it isn't a space of judgment, it's a space of compassionate understanding that goes, oh, okay, well, what can I do to help? Is there something I could do that's in my strength that meets you in that space, in that process? And once we get to that first road stop, that first rest stop, now all of a sudden we're caravanning. My
Mm-hmm.
parents are Airstreamers, and they've got that big silver bullet type of trailer, and they would do this every single year. They did it like for over 20 years. But the first leg of their trip was always their own trip. There was their own process to get to that first stop, where all of a sudden there was 10 or 15 trailers, and then they would get in this caravan, and there would be a leader, there'd be a trailer, like someone at the end, a caboose, and they would just begin to now then navigate through the rest of their journey to get to that final destination. This is what we're ultimately looking to build on,
Mm-hmm.
is that once we've addressed the gap and we are able to, and this would be a key step, be able to articulate the limitation, not as something I'm working on, but I need someone to come in alongside me so that I'm not trying to do this alone.
Mm-hmm.
I need to become more compassionate. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. I can be the bull in the china shop, but I don't need to then be the compassionate person. But I do, or I am responsible to be more compassionate.
There's a difference,
There's a
absolutely.
difference there, right?
Right.
And so I think that we are going to address each of these styles in a way that hopefully helps us articulate and move so that we can arrive at the space of collaboration.
Yeah.
That's kind
And
of where we
that's,
sit.
yeah. And I think I speak for both of us where we are super excited for the next few episodes coming up as we dive into these things that Brett has just mentioned. So we invite you to join us for the next few episodes, the whole season, of course. But we do look forward to hearing your comments and your questions even ahead of some of these episodes. So please let us know what is coming up for you, difficulties, challenges, things that you've learned from the previous episodes. It's all interesting, and we always learn from things and are excited to be able to respond to folks and interact with you. So thank you again for joining us for this shorter episode of Fish Out of Water. Look forward to seeing you guys soon.
Thanks, guys.